I can see myself.
How is everybody doing tonight? We have
Unity, Payton, and Sadie.
And we're talking about the moon. Now, I'm Scott, and I just kind of walked up the driveway and I saw this cool thing going on. I said, hey, it's a chance to get on YouTube, so I'm going to do it. But we have the telescope in our view right now. We're looking at the moon. So right over here, Payton and Unity and Sadie are going to show you the telescope.
This right here is the telescope. Right there.
And what's in the telescope?
The moon.
Now, if you guys take a look at the sky, you can see the moon really nice. But we're going to put our camera into the telescope tonight so you guys can see.
Hello, Fabian.
Now, you guys ready to go to put the moon in the telescope?
Yeah. Yep. Hello, Fabian. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. Fabian.
Here we go.
Hello, everyone. If you guys want a shout out, you can type your name in the chat and we will see it.
And there's the moon. Now, this is live in our telescope over here. And we're going to zoom in just a little bit so you guys can get a better view. How's that sound? Zoom out a little bit. There we go. Now let's get a little bit more centered. And what we're looking at tonight is what kind of moon, girls? Is it a waxing crescent moon?
Yeah. Yep.
And we have the chance for you guys to all get involved too.
You. The live stream right here.
All right. What do you want your friends to do?
You guys can put your names in the chat and we will give you shout outs.
And what's everyone seeing right now on the moon? What are we looking at?
Craters.
We have some facts here that the girls are going to read off. You know, I'm going to just say something really fast. So this one over here, this is Payton. This one over here, this is Uni. And this one right here, this is Sadie. 5 minutes ago, I had to be like, do I need to tell you again, Uni? Because they were running around like crazy people. Now, not a sound. Nice and calm. I think that we just need to put the kids on the camera all the time. And then everybody else can just chill out and relax. So we have some lunar facts here that the girls are going to be sharing with you tonight. And as over the next hour, while we look at the moon, they're going to read them off. We're going to zoom in on the moon a little bit more sometimes. We're going to look at very specific craters on the moon. And we're just going to kind of get everybody introduced to looking up at the moon, because the moon's really cool. It's there all the time. We may not see it all the time, but the moon is always with us. It's like our space buddy. And having that moon is why we have life on Earth, because the moon does a lot for us. It takes Earth and it made us tilted on our axis, which is 23.4 degrees, which is why we get our seasons, which is actually really important today. But the moon also exaggerates the tides, which is all the gravity that pulls on the Earth from the sun. The moon's gravity pulls on the Earth too, and it causes the tides in the oceans, which move up the beach and down the beach and allowed a lot of our ancestors to climb out of the water. So what do you girls want to say? You guys got something you want to say?
Hello, Fabian, and hello, Anne.
What was that?
I just said hello to the people.
We got a shout out there?
Yeah, Fabian and Anne. Hello.
Read off some of these things, you two. Or you three.
The big dark areas are called Maria, which is Latin for sea. The holes all over the moon are called craters, and they are from large asteroids and meteors that smash into the moon.
Sadie, why don't you read that one right there?
Tonight the moon is 278,868 miles distant from the Earth.
Think about that, guys. 278,000 miles away. That's far. Imagine driving that. Imagine if that was your commute to work every day. It will be for some people when we start working on the moon. But when you think about that distance, that means it takes light a little bit over half a second to get to Earth. So when you see the moon tonight live, you're actually seeing it from half a second ago. Sadie, why don't you read this one too?
The moon tonight is a 44% waxing crescent phase. Waxing means the moon is getting bigger each night. Crescent means the moon is less than half full.
So does that make sense to all you guys? I mean, we're talking about what the moon looks like every night. And the reason we see the moon in phases like this is because the moon is orbiting around the Earth, but sunlight is hitting the moon, just like it hits the Earth. But the parts of the moon that we see are not always the parts that are in sunlight. Sometimes we see some of the area in sunlight. Sometimes we see all of the area in sunlight, which is the full moon. And sometimes we don't see any of the side that's in sunlight, which is the new moon. Tonight's moon, only 44% of the side that's in sunlight we can see. And that makes the moon look like almost like a letter C, but we're closer to a half moon tonight. And we call this a crescent. Now, because the moon's getting bigger, that means it's waxing. If it was getting smaller, it'd be waning. Exactly, Payton. So who knows the opposite of a crescent?
What was it?
So we have a waxing crescent. But once we get past the half moon, what is it called? What do you guys think? What do you think, Uni? Starts with a G?
I feel like I know it, but I can't remember.
I'll give you the hint. The first syllable is gib.
Gibbous.
That's right. It's called a gibbous. I think gibbous is a funny word. It makes me think of like a half chicken, half turkey for some reason. But we're going to be in the gibbous phase starting the day after tomorrow. Now, Uni, there's something really cool about today that you might want to tell us. What is it?
Today is the vernal equinox, which means it is the first day of spring. Today, there is the same amount of daylight as there is nighttime. Starting tomorrow, the days are longer than the nights.
So today's the vernal equinox. That's really cool. That means that this is one of the days that tilt that we have on Earth, that 23.4 degree axial tilt, that's because the moon tilts us on our axis. Today's one of those days where our seasons change, and our seasons are from that tilt. If you were to look at the Earth today from space, what you would see is Earth tilted like this, with the sun kind of right where you guys are looking at us from. So the equator would go across the Earth this way. So we're not tilted towards the sun and we're not tilted away from the sun. So today, as the Earth spins, the sun is going to set at the same time for each location north and south of the equator. And the daytime is going to be just as long as the nighttime is. But starting tomorrow, the days are going to be a little bit shorter than the night, and it's going to get more and more dramatic every day. Eventually, when we get into summer, you get the really, really long days, and you only get a few hours of night. So today's the first day of spring. So happy spring to all of you guys, and happy vernal equinox. Do we have any shout outs going on here?
Hi, Lizzie. And Fabian asked, where do the names of the moon phases come from?
Where do the name of the moon phases come from? Wow, so that's a good one. Most of the names we have in space, they come down to different languages. So when it comes to the moon, you have a lot of Latin. So Maria is the Latin word for sea, and gibbous sounds Latin to me, and so does, well, waxing and waning don't sound too gibbous to me. But I think that a lot of the names of the phases come down to how the moon changes. So as it gets more and more of the side and sunlight in our view, so it looks like it's getting bigger every night, That's waxing, so it's getting bigger. And then you get the first quarter moon, which is when it's half full. And then you're in the gibbous phases, so it's no longer looking like a C. Now it looks almost like a full moon with a piece missing. But every night it continues to wax until you get to the full moon, which looks everything on the moon we can see. And then after that, it starts to get into the gibbous phase again, but it's getting smaller every night because it's waning. Then you get to the third quarter, which is the half moon again, but the other side of the half. And then after that, you're in your waning crescent all the way down until the moon disappears for a day. And that's the new moon.
Hi, Lindsay. Does anyone have any questions that we could answer?
I guess a good question would be, what's everyone's, what do you guys, what do you think? What's your favorite thing on the moon? Is it the Maria? Is it the craters? Is it them aliens? You know, we used to think there were dinosaurs on the moon. Is it the dinosaurs? What's your favorite thing?
Craters.
The craters? What do you think, Sadie?
I like the craters too.
What's that?
I like the craters too.
You like the craters too?
Mhm.
Yeah, the critters.
You know what I like?
What?
The dinosaurs.
Of course.
Totally, the dinosaurs.
Of course, you're like the dinosaur. Do you think everything's a dinosaur?
And Fabian asks, as for the till and our seasons, what would theoretically become of our seasons if there was no tilt at all? If our NS polar axis were perpendicular to the straight line between us and the sun.
Was there a question there?
Yeah,
I just read
that's
that.
a good one.
I just read that.
All right, I can read it. From Fabian, and as for the till in our season, what would theoretically become of our seasons if there were no tilt at all, as if our N/S polar axis were perpendicular to the straight line between us and the sun?
And
So what do you think, Payton? What do you think the answer to that question is?
I don't know.
So if the axis of Earth's tilt was perpendicular to our angle with the sun, which means that we weren't tilted like this, we're actually straight up and down, and the sun's over here, then we wouldn't have any seasons, because as we went around the sun, we would never be tilted towards it. We would never be tilted away from it. And we would always have the equator being the spot where the sun is directly overhead all the time. So what would happen is the equator, the equatorial region, would be even hotter than it is today. And we wouldn't have really cold winters at our latitude. And we wouldn't have really hot summers. It would be kind of like
The same
fall and spring all the time, but a little bit more mild.
So it would pretty much be the same temperature throughout the whole entire
It'd
year.
be like the same temperature. It would be, I mean, humidity wouldn't be as bad, but we would also have problems with rain because we wouldn't get a lot of that evaporation and condensation happening everywhere. So rain would be very different.
And Jocelyn asked, can you see Jupiter's moons with your telescope?
We can see Jupiter's moons with our telescope. But the problem with it right now is Jupiter is not out right now. We got to wait until the morning to see Jupiter.
And hi, neighbors from Panarin.
Oh, is that a shout out?
Windsor.
Are you giving
Yeah.
a shout out to Uni?
Pam and Windsor.
And
You guys want to zoom in on the moon a little bit?
yeah.
Is there an area of the moon we want to zoom in onto?
Kind of like right there.
Right in that middle area?
Yeah.
All right, let's do that. All right, you guys ready? Looks like we're gonna fly to the moon here.
If anyone has any questions, you can type in the chat and we'll answer them the best we can.
I'm gonna move it just a little bit. We're gonna have a little focus in it, right here. Look at that beautiful moon.
It
Does
looks
anyone of you guys remember the name of that crater right there?
It starts with an A.
Starts with an A. Do you remember? It's
No.
a funny name.
it's AD or something.
It's angry.
Angry.
Payton thinks it's angry. I think it looks angry too. That crater is very mad.
Yeah, 'cause it's on the
Doesn't it have like A? I don't know. Starts with an A.
Starts with an A.
Yeah.
we've got a question.
Yeah, there's a question.
Can you see?
Abominable.
And Anne asked, "Can you see any of the things?" Can you see any of the things left on the moon from previous moon missions?
And they also say that it is a really cool zoom in.
What do you guys think? Do you guys think you can see things on the moon with a telescope from the missions?
You would have to zoom in really, really, really close because it's far away, as we read in the fact, and you would have to zoom in almost all the way.
You're right, Payton. So this crater that we see in the middle here, you see that big crater in the middle with the little dot in the center? That crater is like 75 miles wide. So if you were standing in that crater, you wouldn't feel like you're in this little hole in the ground. You would feel like how we are now. Just you see big mountains everywhere in the directions you look, but far away, and that's the crater's rim. So you can't see any of the equipment left on the moon from telescopes on Earth, but you can see them from a telescope that orbits the moon called the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and that's taken pictures of all the landing sites, and you can see the rovers for the missions that had them. You can see the footprints left behind by the astronauts. You can see the ASLEP, which is the Apollo Systems and Landing Equipment Package, I think it stands for. You can see the laser grid array that they use to measure the distance of the moon from the Earth and all that good stuff. Now, there's something that you guys can all see right now that I'm not sure if you've noticed, but we zoomed in on this part of the moon, and there's an interesting feature in view. It looks like an X right on that black line, right on the edge. There's a little X there. You guys see it?
Yeah, right
There it is. That's right. And that's called the lunar X. Sometimes it's called the Werner X. And it's because it's made up of two different craters. And one of the craters is named Werner. So the lunar X, you can only see it for about maybe 2 hours every 29.5 days. And that's it.
Wow.
Hi, Francis. Does anyone have any more questions that we could answer?
That was uni.
That was the car.
Miss
Tracy asked, how deep would an average crater be?
They're deep. So when you think about craters, you got to think about mountains. What do you guys think? Do you think that craters would be like 100 feet tall, 1,000 feet tall? What do you think? Like kind of like the bathtub, maybe?
Somewhere
100 million.
between what?
100 million.
Somewhere between 100 and 500.
What's that?
Somewhere between 100 and 500.
And 100 and 500. What do you think, Sadie?
I'll go with 600. I don't know.
So let's look at it this way. You guys see that crater that's kind of in the middle to the left of the X? It's got a bigger crater to the left of it, but the one we're looking at has a shadow in it and a little dot right in the middle. That little dot in the middle is a bounce back when that crater formed, kind of like when you throw a pebble into water and it pops up from the center.
Yeah.
That little dot is taller than Mount Washington. So when we're talking about how deep craters are, we're talking about the crater rim being as tall as the Rocky Mountains. Imagine that. That's a big difference. So this was Payton loved this one. Payton has something she wants to tell you guys about.
The temperature on the moon is 253 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and negative 387 degrees Fahrenheit during the night.
Imagine having that type of temperature change every day. Why do you guys think that happens? What do you think?
No atmosphere?
Because there's no atmosphere on the moon.
Yeah.
You know, if you step into a shadow, it goes from 253 degrees Fahrenheit all the way down to 387 degrees below Fahrenheit.
Lindsay asked, why is the moon important for waves and tides?
What's the question?
Why is the moon important for waves and tides?
Like,
What do you guys think?
I think it's important because it's kind of like when it changes throughout the day, the waves either like change how high they go and how low they go. And like
gravitational force.
Gravitational? And so you're talking the tides throughout the day, and you're saying it's from gravity. What do you think, Uni?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Gravity.
I think a surfer can better answer this question. What do you guys think, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
So we're going to defer that to surfers. No, I can answer it. And I think these guys just did answer it for you. So everyone here is right. So Peyton's right that it happens over the course of the day. And like Sadie said, it's because of gravity. But when you think about how this works, as we orbit around the sun, we're spinning really fast. So it takes us 24 hours or 23.56 hours to spin one full rotation on Earth's axis, which is our day. And what happens is with the side of Earth that's facing the sun gets a little bit more of the sun's gravity. And the sun kind of pulls the water towards it. But the moon has gravity too. And it takes the moon. So Sadie, how many days does it take the moon to go around the Earth?
The moon makes one full orbit around Earth every 27.3 days.
So 27.3 days for the moon to get all around the Earth. So if the moon is in between the Earth and the sun, which is what we call the new moon, then you also have not just the gravity of the sun pulling the water over, but you also have the gravity of the moon too. So it pulls a lot more water towards it. And the same thing happens when the moon is on the opposite side of Earth than the sun. It pulls the water back the other way. And that's called the spring tide. So the gravity of the moon as it spins around causes the water to pull towards it. And then as it moves away, it causes the water to splash back and jump back the other way. And this is what gives us our tides. The waves, that's all comes down to the wind and what's on the ocean floor as it comes up towards the surface.
If you have any questions, just type in the chat, or if you want to shout out, and we'll give you a shout out and say hi.
The moon is moving away from the Earth at a rate at 1.5 inches every year.
So does that mean we're going to lose the moon?
I wouldn't think so because it kind of has like a gravitational pull-ish. And the moon, like, I think it was a meteor that like came down and the rock just floated from space. Well, floated into space.
So you think that the moon is going to eventually get to a point where it stops moving away?
Mm-hmm.
That's possible. That's called equilibrium, which just means balance.
Oh yeah, we learned that in
we learned
science.
that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Why, is that one of your words you're learning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
So we learned.
I learned.
Do you want to move the moon around a little bit? Try to look at one where maybe see if we can see some neat stuff in other areas.
All right, let's try it.
Does anyone have any questions so far? Another interesting fact is one day on the moon is as long as 227 days on Earth. Sorry.
Another fact is that humans have stepped on the moon 6 times.
Okay, we've got a question from
Bo Dugas. So, what is the largest crater on the moon?
Is it the one?
what's the largest crater on the moon?
What do you guys think?
I think that's the one that we was talking.
You think it's crater Blipster Crandall?
No,
No.
the one that we were talking about earlier.
Oh,
No.
Dewey Lorenjor.
Dewey
Yeah.
Lorenjor?
Wait, these aren't craters?
No.
I think it's I can't.
the one we were talking.
Do you know what the
Yes.
biggest crater is called? It's big.
Yeah.
It's called Aiken Basin.
What?
Aiken Basin. Aiken Basin is on the south pole of the moon. It's so big that it sinks down 3 times before you get to the middle. The second biggest crater is called Oriental Basin. And Oriental Basin is so big that it makes it look like there's a dent in the side of the moon.
We've got a question from Francis.
Yeah, Francis asked, how many craters are there?
What do you guys think? How many craters on the moon? What do you guys think?
Like 100 to like 500.
But you see all the craters we're looking at tonight. Let's zoom out real quick.
There's like a lot
There are
of
a lot.
Like, let's
craters.
see here. What are we seeing here? How many craters do we see here? Look at all these craters.
There's probably over
Like-
1,000.
Yeah, over
I'd say a
1,000
couple
now.
thousands.
Yeah.
So
And I mean,
let's take a look here, because we might actually be able to see craters inside craters. And that's called subcratering. I'm not seeing any right in this area, but we might see some in a little bit. There are so many craters on the moon. There's probably thousands and thousands of craters on the moon.
And
all
then
right. And
and
Pam
Pam
asks,
asked-
how big is the moon compared to Earth?
the moon is 1/4 of the size of Earth, and then it also has 1/16 of the gravity of Earth.
And then Francis asks, why does the moon have craters?
Why does it what?
Why does the moon have craters?
What do you guys think? What do you think the craters are from?
I think the craters are
They
from.
say like there's asteroids and meteors.
Oh, what do you think?
I think they're from the asteroids and meteors trying to like pass by through the sky.
Yeah.
And just collide with the
Asteroids and
moon.
meteors that smashed into the moon.
That's right, asteroids and meteors. But it was really big asteroids and very big meteors. They weren't called meteors; they're called planetesimals, and they had smashed into the moon and made craters everywhere. But it doesn't happen like this anymore. Now we only get small things hitting the moon, and then instead of leaving big craters,
And
they erase all the craters that are there. That's not very nice, huh? We want to see impacts.
If you have any more questions, just type them in the chat. Here's another interesting fact. Humans have stepped on Earth more than the moon 6 times.
Lindsay says Grandma Anne Marie and Papa Frank are watching.
Shout out to Sadie to them.
Grandma Anne Marie wants to know if there is water on the moon.
Is there water on the moon?
I don't think there's water on the moon because it would just all the water would just like float away.
I'll have to
agree
agree.
with
There's
that.
like barely any gravity in space.
I think it would just
So-
float away.
Guess what? There is water on the moon.
There is
There is, but it's ice. It's in
Oh,
ice
That
form,
makes sense.
and it's in
solid water.
Is it
the
in minerals
craters
and
that
stuff?
don't go in the sunlight.
Oh,
And
here's
then-
another interesting fact from my mind that I just thought about when he said crater. The moon.
That's a fact right there.
And so the interesting fact is every time like if it's a full moon, no matter what, you only see one side of the moon. There's always this one side that we will never see unless you go onto the moon and see it for yourself.
Peyton, that is really awesome. You're right. That's totally true. We only see one side of the moon all the time. We always see the same side. And you know what that's called?
No.
What do you think, Uni?
I don't know.
So we've been talking about all night. We've been using the term tide a lot. It's called tidally locked. So that means that, and it says it right here, that where we have here is that line right there. You want to read it for me, Sadie?
Sure. One day on the moon is as long as 27 days on Earth.
And that's just as long as what, Unity?
One full orbit around
Is how long is that?
27.3 days.
So as long as it takes to orbit the Earth is how long it takes for one day to finish on the moon.
So Francis asked, how many moons are there altogether?
Oh boy.
How many moons are there altogether?
Yeah.
I would say a lot.
Well, I guess like moons around Earth or moons around everything?
Around all the planets, because I know there's like
There's a lot.
Yeah.
How many moons are on Jupiter, Uni?
Oh, like 70, 80
Isn't it
something.
70 to 90 something between
Yeah.
You guys are close.
74.
It's about 81.
Yeah.
Do you got any moons that are around Saturn?
Like
7.
2. Is it like 60 something? 70?
I know one of the planets has 27.
92.
92. Wow.
Do you know how many moons Neptune has? What do you think?
Neptune?
27.
Neptune.
Isn't it like 2 or
Close,
something?
double that.
Wait.
What'd you say?
I don't know.
What did you say, Peyton?
27. I'm doing the math.
Oh, no, it's not 27. What's double of 7?
So like
14.
14.
Oh.
Do you know how many moons
Almost right.
Uranus has?
2.
Not quite.
I'm not gonna know that.
It's like 23.
So Emily asked, how cold is it on the moon?
That's Peyton's question. She knows that one.
How cold is it on the moon? It is 253 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and negative 387 degrees Fahrenheit during the night. Here we go, another question right here. How big is our moon compared to the other moons?
So you think the Earth has the biggest moon?
No.
No.
Do you think Earth has the smallest moon?
No. I think it's in the middle between big and small.
It's in the middle. What do you
Middle.
think, Sadie?
I think it's in the middle too.
I think
You think it's smaller?
I think it might be closer
No.
to bigger.
I think it might be closer to bigger too.
You think it might be closer to bigger? You think it's the second biggest?
That's oddly specific, but no.
Third biggest?
Maybe like
Maybe.
second.
Yeah.
It's in second, third, or fourth.
Yeah, maybe.
So do you guys know what the largest moon is?
What?
No, one of Jupiter's.
You're right, one of Jupiter's.
I only knew that because there's like a.
The largest moon is called Ganymede, and it's Jupiter's moon. You know who has the second largest moon?
Saturn.
Saturn, that's right. And what's it called?
Oh, I don't know.
It starts with a T.
T. I don't know.
Rainbow Dash?
Yeah, that doesn't start with a T.
Oh, wait, that's right. That starts with a Z.
R.
Oh, that's right. A T.
Okay.
It's called Titan.
Payton.
You know what the third largest moon's around?
Our moon.
Nope.
No.
I would say ours is the fourth.
What do you think, Sadie?
Not quite sure.
It's around Jupiter
Again?
again, and it's called
Jupiter has a lot of moons.
Callisto.
Our
And the fourth largest. What do you think that's around?
moon?
Our moon.
Nope. Not yet.
Another one of Jupiter's.
That's right. Which one is it? What do you
Oh,
guys
I
think? It is called Io. I'm sorry, Io. And do you know what the fifth largest moon is around?
Ours.
That's right, ours.
I know it was somewhere.
We have the fifth largest moon.
All right.
Okay.
So from Tracy, we have: is it possible that the moon and Earth would ever collide?
I don't think it will ever collide.
You don't think it
Maybe
will?
in like
No,
all.
'cause it
like,
is
maybe,
it's
like-
moving like 1.5 inches away from Earth.
That's right. It's moving away, so it's not moving closer. But do you think that the moon might have ever been, if there's ever been a collision here in the past from the moon? What do you guys think about that?
Yes.
So
I
kind
think
of.
so.
The moon came about because another object crashed into us. It was a small planet. It was called Theia. And Theia got big, almost about the size of Mars. And it was in the same orbit as Earth, but it's like, I want to be the boss. And Earth was like, nope, sorry. And it started to move towards Earth. And it smashed into the top of Earth and pushed Earth sideways on our axis. And got Earth spinning really fast, and a big bunch of debris came off, and Theia lost because Theia was smaller. And all of that debris formed into the moon. But when that happened, the moon was so close that it took up almost the whole sky.
Oh my.
But it's been moving away from us for
Yeah.
1.5 inches every year.
Okay, so Francis asked, how come we can see the moon during the day?
I can't.
What do you think, Uni?
Payton answered.
Peyton, I know Peyton's dying to answer.
I think you can see the moon during the day because as the sun goes up, it kind of like reflects the moon. Because the moon can't light itself up. It's not really a star. It's a piece of dirt that you can pretty much step on. I think it's because of the sun that hits the moon, and the moon just like releases itself to the visible eye.
Planetary geologist over here, right? Peyton is right. She's right. It's because sometimes the moon is in a part of our sky that is when the sun is hitting that side of Earth, and we can still see it hitting that part of the moon. So the moon is, you think of it this way, the moon is above the horizon for almost half the day during the winter, and then in the summer months, the moon is above the horizon for about 1/3 of the day. And the horizon is, you know, the bottom of the ground, where the sky ends and the ground begins. So that means that if the moon rises right before the sun does, then it's going to be in the daytime for most of the time that it's above the horizon.
Derek asked, does the far side of the moon look similar to the near side? I don't think it does.
What did Derek ask?
Does the
Does
far
the far side of the moon look similar to the near side?
What do you think?
I don't think so, because there could be more craters or less craters, because it depends on which side it's really coming from. You can't really like say it looks similar because
You haven't really ever seen it.
Yeah.
you haven't really ever seen it
Or
unless you're
observed it
unless you're an astronaut.
So, yeah, that's right. The other side of the moon, we don't ever get to see it when we look up with our telescopes. The only way we see, how do you think we see the other side of the moon? How do you think we would do it? What do you think, Payton?
Astronauts and the satellite.
Astronauts and satellites, right. So some of the Apollo missions, they all flew around the moon. Before the Apollo mission started landing on the moon, the earlier Apollo missions flew around the moon. And we got a view of the other side, and it doesn't look like our side. It's got a lot of craters, but not a lot of those big dark maria, those dark areas. Who's Derek, Uni?
Isn't he the guy from Frosty Drew?
That's right. What does Derek do at Frosty Drew?
He's a volunteer.
He's one of our volunteer astronomers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have Aiden who said hello, and they also asked, I may be getting a small 70 millimeter telescope so I can look at the moon until I can get a 10-inch.
Dobsonian soon.
Not a question, but
Someone's
cool.
asking about getting a telescope.
Not a question, but
Not a question, but
Yeah,
I
it's like a statement.
Mhm.
Cool.
That's cool.
We have
So Tracy asked, as the moon gets further away, are our tides being affected?
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
as the moon gets farther away, I do not think it's getting affected because, as you said earlier, it has to do with the wind and the bottom of the ocean.
That's the waves, but not the tides. So,
I think it's going to affect it.
so what does affect our tides is not so much the distance of the moon. It does a little bit, but it's the position of the moon. So the moon isn't always the same distance from us. Sometimes it's a little further, sometimes it's a little closer. And that's because there's no perfect circles, right? Like try to draw a perfect circle with just your hand, and it's not going to come out right. Even Earth's got more gravity in some places than other places. It depends on how much mass there is in any spot. So sometimes the moon's a little closer, sometimes a little further away. But remember what I was saying, if the moon's new or full, then you get the spring tide, which is really strong. But if it's like where it is tonight, we call this the neap tide, which means that it pulls the water that way, but the sun's pulling it this way. So it doesn't, so it kind of ends up all on one side, but not all in one spot.
So it's kind of like it's kind of like they're both canceling each other.
In a way, they're working together, but they're not working together on the same spot.
They're more like,
They're kind of, like you said, they're kind of fighting with each other.
Yeah.
But if you get the spring tide, when the moon is at its closest, then you get a very strong tide. And if you get a spring tide when the moon is at its closest and you have a hurricane and you get storm surge, they call that storm tide. And that's what happened when Hurricane Sandy came through when you guys were just a little bit younger. Let's change the spot on the moon.
so far, no more questions. Yet again, you can ask us anything about the moon.
Or just a shout out to say hello.
You guys got any shout outs going on in there?
Not yet.
You guys have any dinosaurs on the feed?
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, so let's have you guys kind of tell some people a little bit what they're looking at here. So,
Okay.
Sadie.
Yeah?
Can you describe that for me?
The little spot right here.
That spot there.
Well, it doesn't look like it has many craters. It just kind of looks like a darker spot on the moon.
And it's on the left side.
Mhm.
And it's kind of big and round and darker.
Yeah.
So since it's dark, What do you think it's called?
Amaria?
Maria. And that one's called Maria Serenitatis. And that's a Latin word for the Sea of Serenity.
So, Emily and Kai say hi.
And someone, Beth, said they loved learning from us.
And Francis asks, how did the moon get its name?
I mean, that's kind of, what do you guys think? I mean, you think it's kind of weird that we call Earth's moon the moon?
Yeah.
What do you think, Payton?
I think it's because we didn't know back when the other planet crashed into Earth. I cannot say the name. And it went up. I think that it's got its name because we didn't know that all the other planets actually had moons of its own.
You're right. So we just called it the moon. Who do you think discovered that other planets had moons?
A person?
Really? It wasn't a dinosaur?
No.
That just ruined everything I thought I knew.
thought it was a cat.
I thought, you know what? I could see a cat.
Yeah, cat.
SWAT.
I was just gonna say Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong went up there and was like, wait a minute. This isn't Earth's moon. Where are we? Actually, what are the moons of Jupiter called? Do you know what they're called? The 4 what moons of Jupiter?
No.
Are they called the 4 Galilean moons of Jupiter?
Sure, I'm pretty sure.
So who do you think the 4 Galilean moons of Jupiter are named after? What do you think, Sadie? That name sound familiar?
I think I know. Someone named Galilean.
Galileo, that's right. Someone named Galileo. His full name was Galileo Galilei, and he hacked his telescope, which is a lot like the telescope we have tonight, to get a better view of the moon, and he tested it on Jupiter and saw all these stars around it. But every night the stars are moving around, and he was like, I don't understand what's going on here. And then after a week, he was like, wait a minute. Those aren't stars. Those are moons.
I have a question.
Sure.
In Galileo, is that like what they say in the song Bohemian Rhapsody?
Galileo, Galileo. Yep. That's him.
And then Gaming with Aiden said, in the summer, if I go, I may be able to see. I'm sorry. In the summer, if I go, I may be able to meet Scott.
Who's Scott?
I don't know.
I have no idea who that is.
I think that's you.
Yeah, I think it might be the person that's standing in front of the camera.
I don't know who's Scott. My name's not Scott. My name is Blipster.
Hi, Blipster.
Hello, Blipster.
I'm Blipster.
Does anyone have any questions so far?
So now that we found Maria Serenitatis, which is the big round flat dark area on the left,
It looks like ice.
look at that one right here. How would you describe that one, Payton?
It looks like ice.
Looks like ice. Where is it in relation to this one?
It's more like down south.
It's kind of more down a little bit and to the right.
It's kind of like
It's southeast. yeah.
southeast, yeah.
Southeast, and it's not as round, right? It's kind of more bumpy around the
It's
edges.
messy.
That one's called Maria Tranquillitatis, and that stands for the Sea of Tranquility. And that Maria is where the first humans to ever land on the moon landed. Do you know the name of the 2 humans that first were on the moon?
One of them was Neil Armstrong, I think.
Neil Armstrong doesn't exist.
Yes, he does.
We sent dinosaurs to the moon.
Yes, we did.
You're right. It was Neil Armstrong. What's the other guy's name?
I don't know.
I feel like I know this, but I just don't remember.
He's got the same name as the guy from Toy Story.
Woody.
Buddy.
Woody.
I just said Buddy.
Not Woody.
Buzz Lightyear.
Buzz.
Nice.
Buzz Aldrin is the guy's name.
And
But there was another one, but he didn't go on the moon. He stayed in the spaceship
I know
that was
his
going
name.
around the moon, waiting for him to come back up. Do you know what his name was?
I know his name, but I don't remember it.
His name was Bebopaloopy.
Huh?
It was Michael Collins was his name.
And Tracy said, since the moon keeps slowly moving away from Earth, at one point in time would we not be able to see it? Oh,
What do you think? What do you think, you guys? You guys were talking about that before. What do you think, Sadie?
I'm not really sure.
What do you think, Peyton? You kind of had a strong point of view on this before.
I think at one point, maybe like a long, long, long time in the future, you could only just see like a tiny piece. But I don't think it will go far away where we can't see it at all, because the Earth and the moon kind of have like a gravitational pull to each other, so it'd be like pulling another person's sleeve.
You're right. So eventually it's going to take too much energy. It's probably going to get to a point where it's just not going to move away anymore.
So from Francis, they ask, can two people hear each other on the moon?
Can people what?
Can two people hear each other on the moon?
That's a really good question. So, what do you guys think? So the moon doesn't really have an atmosphere, so there's not a lot of air or anything. So, do you guys think you can hear things in space?
I don't think so, because you would have to be. You could even be screaming at the top of your lungs and just hear.
And why is this? Why do you guys think it's like that? What do you think, Peyton?
There's no gravity. There's no like air. There's no atmosphere, and there's like no like buildings that can like bounce the noise. If that makes sense.
That does. You're actually describing it perfectly. So there's no medium. And that's what Peyton was describing. A medium is something that you would use. There's no medium to carry sound in space. So there's no way to get it from you to the other person. But is there sound in space? What do you guys think about that?
If you had a radio, maybe.
I think there is.
You're right. You're right. Sound still exists in space. There's just nothing to carry the sound. So it doesn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. It's like a like if we learned this in science, it was like a sound wave. It requires a medium.
Electric.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think it was medic.
What is it?
Was it electric?
We're inspiring a fight here.
Yeah.
And something
the sound
about
waves.
magnetic and sound waves.
Sound waves require a medium, and you would have to scream very, very, very loud to hear someone in space, because the sound that you're progressing, there's nothing, like there's no air to carry it. So if we were like all the way apart, I would still be able to like hear you if you scream to me, because there's air or some medium that carries the sound waves to the other person.
So if my ear was right against your face in space, then the air from your breath would carry that sound to my ear.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't do that in space because you can't
Take off
expose yourself to space. So, but if you use a radio, which is light, then you can talk to each other through radio.
Okay, so Derek asked, does the Earth always have one moon?
Has the Earth? Well, we actually had another satellite, like it's another moon we had for about a week, I think, 2 weeks this past year. It was called SO2, I think. I'm not sure, but it's gone now. It left.
Oof.
It didn't like us.
As of right now, the moon is Earth's only natural satellite.
So basically, probably like once in a great while, there would be like just a tiny another moon.
Yep, you can pick up other ones. We have a lot of artificial satellites up there. There's a glove up there.
A what?
A what now?
Exactly, a glove.
I mean,
A dinosaur tail.
if you dropped a glove in space, it would just float away.
Imagine if there was a dinosaur, like a big dinosaur balloon floating around up there.
I would die laughing.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Any shout outs?
Anybody want to just say hi?
Hi.
Are there any other sections of the moon that people want to see?
You can also give us like spots of the moon where you would like to see that we can see from the telescope. So if you would like us to zoom out so you can pick a spot on the moon that you can see, you could ask us to do that. Okay.
There's the X.
Now the funny thing is, on the big, I don't want to call it line, but the big line. But I'm gonna call it a line anyway because I don't have other way to describe it. The big line that goes across. Most of the craters look like it's making an X and an O and then an X and then an O.
Can you find your name, huh?
Let's see. No.
Not enough letters.
I see a U, but no name.
What you're actually seeing, that's called the Terminator. Because it's where it sounds cool for scientists to say the Terminator on the moon. But it's where the sunlight terminates and the night area begins. So it's where that's a good way to think about it more plainly is a sunset line. So that dark area where all you see all those craters with the X and the U and the O, that's the sunset line. That's where the sunlight ends. And if you go just past it into the darkness, that's the nighttime area on the moon.
Is the moon hollow? From Tracy.
Is the moon hollow?
Yeah,
What do
I
you-
don't think it's hollow because if you say you were to dig a hole in the earth, which is what the moon is made out of, you would find mortar and some stones. So if you were to dig a hole in the moon, it would be kind of hard. It wouldn't be hollow. It'd be full of different kinds of rock.
I have something to say.
Yes.
And when like the asteroids and stuff hit the moon, if it was hollow, it'd probably go like right through it. But if it's not, then it would probably like leave the indent that it did.
That's right. Yeah, the moon is not hollow. It's got a mantle and a core just like Earth does.
Hi, Missy and Corey.
I've got a question. Would craters ever disappear?
They do. You're right. They do. Craters disappear, but it takes them a really long time. And it's because all those little meteorites are always smashing into the moon and they don't leave craters, but they kind of chisel away at all the craters that are there. So eventually they get erased. And those really big Maria, those are the first craters on the moon, but they don't really look like craters anymore because they've had so much erasing happening.
Any other questions for us?
Is any other things do we have any other things here we can be reading off? We can read the facts again too for people who just tuned in.
Can the moons have moons?
Can the moon have moons? Yeah, it probably could.
I think it could because
I mean, it's got its own gravity.
Frosty Drew Observatory and Science Center asked, "How old is the moon?"
How old is the moon? Well, how old's the Earth?
Billions and billions of years old.
The moon is a little bit, very, very, very little bit younger than the Earth. So the moon is about just under 4.8 billion years old.
So the Earth is about 5 billion years.
4.8 billion years old, the Earth.
Is there any water on the moon? On the moon?
I
Yeah.
think we went over this, right?
Yeah, but she probably just.
Yeah.
So yes, there is water on the moon, but it's not in a liquid form. It's in a solid form, which is ice.
Ice.
Ice. What kind of rock is the moon made of?
What do you guys think? I mean, what do you think?
Probably some type of like a dusty one.
I don't think it's made of a specific rock because yet again it did come from the moon. I mean the Earth. Sorry, it did come from the Earth, and the Earth has a lot of rock. So
You're
it
right.
could be,
It's
like,
all different rock, but it's just like the Earth. When you look at it, the white areas, we call that regolith. And it's like a fine powdery dirt, which is just from meteors constantly hitting the surface. And then you have the dark areas of Maria. That's more, we call it a basalt region, which is all dried up lava.
Okay, you want to answer the next question from Francis?
Sure. So Francis asked, how long is a day on the moon? One day on the moon is as long as 27 days on Earth.
Okay, and from Tim, he said, is the moon too bright to see the stars nearby in this telescope? The moon doesn't really have its own light because the sun kind of reflects on it, which bounces off and makes the light. What? and the stars have their own kind of light, and the moon's just a big piece of rock with reflection.
That's right.
Hello from Auntie Joy and Caitlin.
Tracy asked, what would happen to the Earth if an asteroid hit the moon?
What do you guys think?
The asteroid would just make another big crater, and it would take. And I don't think anything would happen to the Earth unless it was a huge, huge one that pushed it out of orbit.
What do you think, Sadie?
I'd have to agree with Payton.
You agree with Payton?
Yeah.
What do you think? You agree with Payton too?
Yeah.
Yeah, Payton's kind of right. I mean, I don't think an asteroid would be big enough to actually push the moon out of orbit, but it wouldn't do too much to Earth. It would just give us a really great show if we actually saw it happen.
So Anne asked, did the moon ever have plate tectonics?
Who asked that?
And she's
Did the moon ever have plate tectonics? What do you guys think? Did the moon have plate tectonics?
I think it would have at one point, but not anymore because it's in space, and because it came from the Earth yet again, and when it hit the Earth rock and it didn't explode, but it like drifted off into space, and Earth has tectonic plates all everywhere.
So it didn't drift off into space. All of the debris from the object that hit the Earth, which was everywhere, formed into the moon. But no, there weren't any tectonic plate activity on the moon because the moon doesn't have tectonic plates, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't had active geology in the past. There was geological periods on the moon because at one point the entire crust was solid, but underneath it, it was all molten. So it was like all lava underneath the surface.
Okay.
But there weren't different tectonic plates though.
So
I've got a question.
Yes.
How often do you see new craters come onto the moon?
We don't really see them anymore because there's not a lot of really large objects around this orbit like there used to be. So now the moon gets hit with about 100 tons of meteors every day, but they're really small, so they don't leave craters. They just fizzle away at the craters that are there. And you know what? In human history, we've never found an impact crater from any impact that we observed. And we've only seen the moon get impacted enough to see it from Earth twice.
Okay, so Tracy asked, could you have 2 lunar eclipses in the same month?
2 lunar eclipses in the same month?
I don't think so because it happens once every like 10, 20 years. Yeah.
You can get a good deal of about 4 eclipses per year.
Yeah.
But not to have, you can have 2 full moons in a month. And when you have a lunar eclipse, it needs to be a full moon. So that's part of it. But the moon also needs to be inside Earth's shadow.
So that would be.
And the moon is it doesn't go around Earth's equator. It actually follows more of the path of the sun, which we call the ecliptic. So it's 5.1 degrees tilted to the ecliptic. So it's 5.1 degrees tilted to the sun's equator. So what that means is that it's not always, sometimes it's above Earth's shadow, sometimes it's below Earth's shadow. The only way you can get 2 lunar eclipses in 1 month is you would need to have 2 full moons that month. And the first one would have to be just at the very bottom of the shadow, where the second one could maybe just get right at the very top of the shadow. But the possibility of that happening, or probability of that happening, is very unlikely.
1 in like a billion.
There's a lot of ifs that would have to happen.
Okay, so no one's asking any more questions as of now. So I'm going to read 3 facts for people who are just like joining.
31. All right, so we're going to wrap it up in a couple minutes. So let's do 2 more questions, and then we're going to say our bye-byes.
All right.
So if anyone has any other questions or wants a shout out, you can just type it in the chat.
Chat, and then we will answer your questions the best that we can.
We'll zoom the moon out.
Also, if anyone wants to see a spot in the moon, you could ask us too.
Do we have any other questions, or is that it?
It looks like that's it.
Yeah, it looks like that's it.
I've got a question.
What's that?
Do you ever think? Do you think that the craters would ever just would all disappear, so it would be a flat surface, or?
I don't know, Sadie. That's a good question. I don't think so, but I think that there's a possibility that a lot of the very dramatic craters we see on the moon will disappear, and eventually the moon will look a little bit more flat. But that would take
A long time.
all right, so no, I don't think so, because I think by the time that would happen, the Earth and the moon would be too close to the sun, and we would look completely different.
You're welcome, Fabian.
No problem, Fabian.
All right, well, you guys want to say your goodbyes?
Can't wait to see you in Lancaster soon.
Kai's parents said that. I'm pretty sure Kai's parents said that.
Oh, cool. Kai's parents are on. That's nice.
Mhm.
So we're going to wrap up our live stream of the moon. And we had Sadie, Payton, and Unity over here that are rocking the lunar socks tonight. And we hope you guys all enjoyed the view and that you guys had learned something new and found the moon to be exciting tonight as well. So, bye-bye.